So, good morning, Yorkshire Classic Cars Ltd fans. Time for another update in the old workshop. Welcome to another sunny, and it is a beautifully sunny day in Retford. This time last week, it was 2 degrees. This time yesterday, it was 22 degrees, which is quite bizarre, but there you go. Not going to knock it. We don't get enough sunshine to waste it. So, if you look out the door, there is the sun. Look at that, real sun. Haven't done a lot on YouTube over the last week. The mini video that I uploaded, I do hope you've watched that. That shows the sort of work I do. That was the completion video on the mini. Basically, I'd uploaded that a couple of weeks ago and I took it back, but I've had this really nasty chest infection, so I've been struggling with that quite a lot. It's gone on since roughly Easter time, just after Easter. I haven't been able to breathe, I haven't been able to function, and if any of you in the UK have had it, they're calling it a 100-day cough. Honest to God, it knocks you off your feet. I'm diabetic as well, so my blood sugars have been up, down, all around, and it really has knocked the heck out of me, if I'm really honest. So, in the background, you will see the silver Stag of Truth. This is the car I've been working on since I've got back to work. Had a couple of little issues it came in with. It came in with some oil leaks. They were quite profuse, really. It's an automatic transmission car. I'll do you a little walk around and show you the car before we start. So, as you can see, it's a Mark 1 Stag, so an early car. It is let me just check the number plate, a 7273. Excuse me. Some of it is Mark 2 under there. Obviously, this is Mark 2. The rad is Mark 2. The intake manifold is Mark 2. But to be honest, I think when people restore these cars, they use what they can get. When, you know, Mark 1 intake manifold's very, very rare. Took me quite a while to get one for the yellow Stag. So, you know, stuff like that is difficult to get. And quite honestly, you'd have to be an absolute purist to even realise. Transitional cars obviously got whatever they got out of the Triumph factory. But as you can see, very clean and tidy under there. A lot of bling. A lot of nice bling under there. Some like it, some don't, but it's your choice. You can do what you like. The owner obviously likes it. I quite like the painted rocker covers. I mean, this obviously is just a cover. You can take that back off. You can see the eggshell coloured air filter under there. And I quite like the rocker covers painted silver, but that's just my preference. And obviously, I'm not right and he's wrong. And you're not right and we're wrong or whatever sort of thing. So, anywho, as you look around, it's a really tidy, very clean car. Good bodywork on it. It has had some bits of work done on it in the past, but underneath, I'll show you in a second, underneath is absolutely outstanding. Nice mohair roof on there. And as you can see, the interior is by no means standard. Just open that door very carefully. It's got red carpets, which absolutely go with the cream interior. As you can see, the Mark 1 seats with the American headrest extensions, which I really like, actually. They're one of my real favourites in a Stag. It's all been retrimmed in cream leather with red piping. Obviously, a wooden steering wheel there. Automatic, as I say, Borg 35. The clocks are updated. Now, the owner is debating whether to put it all back standard, but I have to say, personally, I really like that interior. Now, if you were really that bothered, and you know, obviously it's his choice, so like I say, it's your choice, but I really do like it. I love the gauges and everything, the cream face gauges, they really do look nice. They've taken quite a bit of fitting. It's obviously got a combined water temperature, oil pressure gauge there. That was part of the issue with the oil leaks, but it was just one of those things, really. When it came in, excuse me, that's a bit of my chest infection still rearing its ugly head. When it first came in, I'll just bob her up on the ramp for you. So, now she's up in the air. I've got a torch here so you can see. You can see that this is a really, really, really good car. Okay, there's a dent in here and there's been a few edge repairs on the floors and stuff, but the actual underside of the car, absolutely excellent condition. Good, honest car under here. Patch there, but nothing major at all. It came in with the exhaust blowing. It's been dry fitted, and unfortunately Stag exhausts are they're a bit weird and difficult to fit. They have oddball hangers like that. The clamps are all a little bit bent out of shape, so I've sealed all that and reclamped everything up. I use silicone sealer on these. That works really, really well. I saw somebody use it years and years ago when I was at Yorkshire Triumph. I thought that's a good idea. So I just use a little bit of engine instant gasket. Actually, works really well. It's heat proof. Silicone is a heat proof, obviously, and fireproof, and it sort of fills all the gaps if there's any gaps around it, and it makes a really nice seal. Stag exhausts are weird. They always sound like they're leaking. Even if they're sealed, they will sound like they're leaking. That's something I learnt very early doors. Now then, so the car came in for the gearbox had been rebuilt 14 months before this gentleman bought the car. However, it was leaking oil quite profusely on here onto the exhaust pipe, and it was filling the car with smoke. It was that bad. Now, I did say to the customer, I don't do automatic transmissions. If it was my own, I'd probably have a go at fixing it. But it isn't, and I don't know what goes on in there. I have a rough idea, but I'm not by no means an expert, so I can't fiddle about with it and then expect to charge a customer for that. So he supplied me with a newly rebuilt gearbox, as you can see. Original torque converter's gone back on, things like the bell housing and all that sort of stuff, and I've put that in there. Whilst it was apart, obviously, I managed to drop one of the torque converter bolts down the back of the flex plate, which was desperately annoying, but unfortunately one of those things. So I whipped the flex plate off because it is only 6 5/8 head bolts. And then I realised the sump was leaking quite profusely, which is probably some of the oil leak. So I took the adapter plate off here. There's an adapter plate on the back to meet up with the bell housing. It's an oddball setup. There's like 12 bell housing bolts. Then only 4 bolts hold that to the engine, which is really bizarre, but that's how Triumph did it. So, you know, it works. And I realised the sump was leaking. So I took that off, took the sump off. And while I was doing it, you probably can't see it now, but up at the back there, the oil pressure gauge feed pipe, the ends are blown off it. So this is the oil pressure feed pipe, as you can see there, and it had just blown that off. So the oil was spraying out under engine oil pressure. Now, luckily, it's got quite high capacity. There it is, look. It's just a pressed-on nylon affair, which, I mean, Ford have used these for many, 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 many years and have been fine. But yeah, so the oil was just basically spraying out of there. So I've been struggled quite profusely to get a good quality oil pressure feed pipe. I had to nip to Rimmers and buy one. And I got one of those, and that has stopped the oil leaks. As you can see, it's pretty much snuff dry under here engine oil wise now. There is still a little residue from the original oil leak up there. You can see it's just a bit shiny where the original oil was. But drip wise, it's absolutely dry now under there. Oops, sorry about that. So that's all nice and oil tight. You will find if you ever have a Stag, or if you're interested in Stags, they will usually leak oil from this side of the engine because you've got the oil filter housing, the oil filter, obviously. This is a spin-on conversion, which leaked less, I have to say. And then you've got the oil pump, you've got the oil pressure switch, you've got the oil pressure feed pipe if it's got a gauge in it. If it's an automatic, you've also got your auto box cooler pipes running down here. So literally everything oil-wise is at this side of the engine. So if you have an oil leak under there, the best thing I can recommend is clean it off with some carb cleaner or engine cleaner, and then dry it all up, you know, rinse it right well off, run the car up, reverse it over a clean patch of concrete and just leave it to sit and see where it's leaking from, and then address it. Usually, 9 times out of 10, it's the oil pump. It's just these bolts have come a little bit loose from the vibration, or the O-ring's gone underneath it occasionally. Sometimes they leak out the oil pressure valve here. But, you know, that's generally it. Obviously, if you're leaking out your front pulleys, that'll spray oil down under the fan pressure. But yeah, she's pretty dry under here now. So there's no massive puddles on the floor. There's no puddles on the floor. Actually, I dried the floor last night before I left. I ran it up to temperature, did the oil level in the gearbox, made sure that was all absolutely perfectly correct. And yeah, it was also leaking. The old gearbox was also leaking from the drain plug. I put a new washer on it first to try and fix that, to remedy that, but the other bit was leaking quite heavily. So, so yeah, she's pretty oil tight under here. Borg-Warner gearboxes do have a habit of dripping. If yours is dripping, doesn't necessarily mean you need to do anything with it. a tiny little drip from a Borg one. They call them a wet gearbox because they literally leak oil constantly. I assume they did that from new. They're just, they're not very oil tight, to be fair. However, this one was leaving, you know, a sizable puddle underneath. It was leaking quite heavily. So, but yeah, all looks clean and dry under here now, so I can finish the rest of the tune and get this back to the customer. He's wanted to come for it tomorrow, but as far as I can see, everything looks funky-dory. Just looking in there, you can see that the tail housing and everything, the tail shaft is all dry. The exhaust isn't blowing anymore. I've got a bit of a carb balance to do on it, and that's that. It's amazing how much jobs can spiral out of control. Well, not out of control, but in size. It simply came in for an oil leak that we thought was the rocker box cover, because obviously the oil was high up, so I assumed it was the crescents on the back of the head or the rocker box cover, because you could see oil all around the exhaust manifold. The customer suspected it was a head gasket. Head gaskets don't leak oil from the outside on a Stag, they leak coolant, they leak oil from the inside. So I said it's definitely not a head gasket. And it does, I mean, I've run this up to temperature yesterday and it runs really cool, actually. Let you see the wire wheels there it's got on as well. I love the colour. I don't know what colour it is, but weirdly, silver cars seem to collect. It's a very similar colour, ironically, to the Spitfire. Neither of which are standard Triumph colours, obviously, but I think it really suits them. Both cars, actually. Yeah, so anyway, the job got a bit bigger. But luckily, it stopped the oil leaks. It stopped all the leaks, as you can see on the floor. You can see the rags there that I dried the floor up with last night. Inevitably, you spill a little bit of oil when you're filling up the auto box, because getting it into here is a nightmare. I made a special funnel and stuff, but it still leaks a bit. Then that runs down here and looks like it's just leaking. So what I do is fill it up with oil, make sure we're up to temperature, wash everything off, and then leave it about an hour. Dry all the floor, dry any residue of warm water or anything, or engine cleaners under here, and then leave it overnight. And when you come back in the morning, if it looks like that, you know you're on a winner. And that's pretty good for me. I'm pretty pleased with that. Now then, take you back over to the Spitfire. Last time I showed you, I'd done the rear wing. I've put a little bit of primer on there and sort of flattened some of the filler in. I've had a word with the painter, who is prepared to do that as soon as I'm ready, basically. The bonnet is still not done. I rang the blaster yesterday to see how he was getting on with the bonnet, and he said unfortunately his wife's had a chest infection. Sounds familiar, and that has led to pneumonia, and she's been very, very, very ill. So he's been off work for a few weeks looking after her, because he said she can't look after herself at the moment. But he said that she's looking a little better recently, so he's hoping to be back in work this week, in which case he should have it done for the weekend. Can't guarantee that, but hopefully that's the case. If not, it'll be sometime next week and I can get the welding done on that. I think the welding, to be honest, I can't see it taking more than a day or two to get all that welding done on the bonnet. You can see why the owner wants the original bonnet changed now. It's down on the floor. You can see the dints here and here and here. These are quite nasty. They would straighten out, of course, but all the front edges rotten here and full of filler. It looks better than it actually is, you know. It is pretty rough. The seams are all full of filler and rough. So, yeah, that's, you can see here, look. This is all just filler in there. The parts that I need for the other bonnet to make it good, I suspect, are the inner arches and things, and they've actually been changed on this, but the outside of the bonnet is rough still. So yeah, so hopefully, depending on when the painter is prepared to take it, because obviously his work changes day to day like mine does. So hopefully this should be on its way in the next week or so to him, and then hopefully away to the customer again in another week. So this one's off tomorrow. That brings me back to my Capri. That's not changed at all. It has actually. I tell a stone cold lie, the Capri has changed. I drilled 2 holes in the bulkhead up under there. You can probably see them. To run the wiring through for the front harness, and I've wired up the headlights and stuff. The front fans were wired up. When I drilled those holes, I put a hole saw in, a 45mm hole saw. Those are actually bungs out of my 350Z, but they suited the purpose perfectly. I stayed back late one night to do it, and I did late. It was about 7:30. And yeah, I put the first one in. I'd got the hole saw on the corners, so I took it out to reposition it in the drill chuck. It flew out of the drill and went straight through my radiator there. So as you can see there's a split in that cooling thingy jobby there, the old bar there. You can just see it there at the end of my finger probably. Now then, I was going to risk some of that stuff that looks a bit like solder. It's supposed to be for aluminium welding and repairs like this. I may still have a go with that. But to be honest, these aluminium radiators, I don't know where they're made. I got this one from Poland, I think. I've just ordered another one and they're like 138 quid delivered. So quite honestly, I've just bought a brand new one. I don't want to faff. When I'm done, I don't want it to be weeping and leaking and have to end up draining all the cooling system and that down. Once the engine is back in, it's staying in, and that's that. So yeah, there's that. The headlights now do work. The wiring's all run up under there with P-clips and stuff nice and neatly. This runs down here, up here, and that's going to be P-clipped up under the wing there with these existing holes where the wings used to be mounted. And this wiring here is the stuff for the engine. So things like the permanent lives, the alternator exciter wire, the alternator feed, the coils, coil packs and stuff like that. So I just thought I'd do those little bits and bobs because the ECU has arrived. And that's a very, very good thing. So the ECU has landed and that's going to end up mounted somewhere here, I think, or probably maybe on the center console there. But either way, that's arrived. So I thought, well, I can just run these wires. The relay box is ready to be mounted up now. But the problem with wiring is everything's tied into everything else. So if you've got like 2 wires left to run, there's no point harnessing it up because otherwise you're going to have to harness it all again. So that is for the wipers. You'll notice the wipers have gone back in. That needs to go to an ignition live or a permanent live. Doesn't really matter. These need to be routed back there for the boost control valve and back up and through the bung. And then I think after that, we're pretty much there for this part of the loom. The other bung hole here that you can't see, but I'm touching, is for the looms for the Mega Squirt. So they're going to go through that side. I haven't started wiring the Mega Squirt yet. I'm literally dreading it, but we'll get there. The wiring diagram seems more fitting for if you've got the original parts from the Range Rover, but I think like everything, if you approach the bits you know and then come back to the bits you don't, then we'll be all right. You know, just if you just sort of eradicate all the known stuff and then come back to the bits you're not really sure about. So yeah, Capri hasn't changed a lot. Been poorly, been too busy when I haven't been poorly, so it's still sat there. Obviously I haven't finished the engine because the sump needs blasting. As soon as I can get the bonnet picked up, he's going to blast the sump. I'm going to take the sump, let him blast it, and then bring it straight back with me because it will only take 10 minutes, I think. And he's going to blast me the rocker covers as well, so they're ready to go on. I have got some gaskets. When I nipped to Rimmers, I bought some gaskets while I was there, and exhaust manifold gaskets. So yeah, this is almost ready to go in, quite honestly. I've got to lathe up a thrust bearing. I've got some phosphor bronze there. I don't know what it actually is. I think it's a trunnion out of a Spitfire or something, but that'll fit the bill. So yeah, Capri, not really coming on at all, but you know, it's there. Anywho, I'll call that a day. I'm wittering on. I do apologise. Less waffle. I try not to trip over the gearbox that's going back to the gearbox people, and I'll finish the Stag off now. Everything's dried off, so I've just done this while I was cleaning it again underneath. And yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. If you have subscribed and not rung the bell, please consider doing it. My views have dropped right off recently. I don't know if my videos are naff or what, but I'm just not getting the views. And like I said before, it's not really worth doing it if nobody's watching them. But thank you anyway. Please take a look at my merch and stuff. Bye-bye.